Hey guys, it's Jen. Welcome back to my channel and welcome back to another recipe video. Today I am sharing a perfect cold weather recipe, which is cider braised beef, some Instant Pot white cheddar mashed potatoes, and homemade banana bread. So if you are ready for some comfort food, come along with me and I'll show you how to make this meal. So the first thing that I'm going to get started on for this meal is the cider beef, because this is what takes the longest. I was excited to try out my new Lodge Dutch oven that Adam got me for Christmas. It's a really pretty red color and I like it a lot. I'll link it down below if you guys are interested. And I'm starting out with about 2 pounds of stew meat. This is beef stew meat. The recipe actually calls for sirloin, but I had some of this already in the freezer and so I used it and it worked just fine. Before I put it into the pan, I just seasoned it with some salt and some pepper and a little bit of garlic powder. And in the pan, I already had melted some butter and some olive oil to saute that in. To the stew, you'll be adding some chopped onion and some carrot. The original recipe, which I'll post down below, calls for turnips. We don't really care for those, and so I don't choose to add them, but that's something that you can add if you like those. Okay, so once your stew meat is cooked through, you can go ahead and add the chopped onion to the meat, and you'll also add some baby carrots. Alternatively, you could, peel and chop your own carrots if you wanted to, but I had these on hand, and so I just decided to use those. I'm adding about 1/2 cup of flour, and I'm just going to stir that around and let it cook for a little bit to get the raw taste out of the flour. This is what is going to thicken up your gravy for your beef stew. So this recipe is sort of like a traditional beef stew, but it has apple cider in the gravy as well as some beef consomme. So it's a really unique flavor. I've been making this for over 10 years and it's really good. So I added a can of beef consomme as well as about 2 cups of apple cider. You want to make sure that you get real apple cider, the cloudiest one that you can find. Don't use apple juice or it will taste really, really sweet. So after you add your liquid, you just want to bring this to a boil on the stovetop before you pop it into the oven. If you don't do that, it will take longer to come to temperature once it's in the oven, and it'll just take longer to cook. So you can see here that it's starting to come to a simmer. So I will put the lid on that and pop it in the oven. I cooked this at 350 degrees for about 2 hours and it was perfect. For dessert to go along with this meal, I decided to make some banana bread because I had some really ripe bananas on the counter that needed to be used. So the recipe that I use is a Martha Stewart recipe. And again, this is a recipe that I've been making for over 10 years. It's my favorite banana bread recipe. I had those bananas in a bowl and I'm just using a fork to mash them up really well. Next, I'm going to cream together a stick of butter that's at room temperature along with 1 cup of white sugar. I'm doing this in my KitchenAid mixer because it's the most convenient, but you could also use a hand mixer if you don't have a stand mixer. So to the sugar and butter mixture, you'll add 2 large eggs, some vanilla, as well as at the end you'll add some sour cream. And I think that's what really makes this banana bread recipe really rich and moist, is the addition of the sour cream. So next you can add your dry ingredients, so flour, baking soda, and salt. I get some questions sometimes on where I got my large glass containers that I use for flour and sugar. I actually just got those at Walmart, but I'll try to find them online and link them down below if I can. They were pretty inexpensive and I love them because you can fit a whole bag of either flour or sugar in there and it's super convenient and looks pretty out on your counter. So once the dry ingredients are mixed in, the recipe says to add your sour cream and your mashed up bananas. Now you can add chopped walnuts or pecans to this recipe if you want to. If it was just me and my husband eating it, I probably would add the nuts, but my kids are kind of, they like nuts, but they're sometimes weird about having nuts in things like this, and so I decided to leave them out. So this recipe makes 1 loaf pan full of banana bread. You could easily double it if you wanted to make 2. I'm just lining my loaf pan with a strip of parchment paper Make sure you do this because it really makes getting your bread out of the pan a lot easier. I sprayed that with a little bit of nonstick spray, and then I'm just scraping the batter into the pan. This will go in the oven at 350 degrees for about 1 hour and 10 minutes. You just want to cook it until it is cooked through and springy to the touch. Okay, so my banana bread is done. I'm just going to let that cool on the counter while I finish up the rest of dinner, and it will be ready to eat for dessert. So the next thing that I'm going to get started on is the mashed potatoes that go with the cider braised beef. This recipe calls for white cheddar mashed potatoes. I don't always make them with the white cheddar cheese, but I had some in the refrigerator, and so I decided to add that this time, and they were really good. I have some just plain Idaho russet potatoes that I am just peeling with a peeler. I know that some people don't like to peel potatoes, but I actually do because I'm a weirdo, and for some reason I think it's relaxing. But the recipe calls for 3 pounds of Idaho potatoes. I had a 5-pound bag, and so I'm just going to kind of eyeball it. I'm actually going to cook these in the Instant Pot, which the original recipe doesn't call for. It's just a regular boil in water recipe, but I prefer making my mashed potatoes now that I have an Instant Pot in there because it is faster, it's less cleanup, I find, and then it's also super easy to keep them warm while you're waiting for the rest of your meal to finish. So I have my peeled potatoes. I went ahead and rinsed those off. I'm just cutting off any dark spots, and then I'm quartering these. You want to leave them a little bit larger in chunks if you're going to cook them in the Instant Pot. I have this steamer basket, which I think is only like $10 or $15 on Amazon. I'll link it down below. It is well worth the price. I use it all the time for like potatoes and veggies and hard-boiled eggs. I would totally recommend getting one if you have an 8-quart Instant Pot, and I believe this might fit in the 6-quart pot too. So I just put the steamer basket in there and add a couple of cups of water. Next, I will put the insert into the Instant Pot, set it to sealing, and cook this on high pressure for 10 minutes. While the potatoes are cooking, I'm going to go ahead and shred up my sharp cheddar cheese. The recipe calls for 2 cups. This is just some sharp white cheddar cheese that I got at Aldi. If you don't have any on hand, I would still recommend making this recipe even with regular mashed potatoes. I've done that plenty of times and it's still delicious. Okay, so now my potatoes are cooked. The other thing I like about using the strainer is that it's super easy to just dump the water out of the bottom and then add the potatoes back to the pot. I am adding a stick of butter, some salt and pepper, and some half and half along with my shredded cheese. And I'm going to apologize in advance because Connor was running around the kitchen and bumping my tripod. So if you see the camera move just like you saw it move now, that's because he was not being careful. But anyway, that's what cooking in the kitchen with kids is like. So I'm using my hand mixer to whip up these potatoes. You can use a hand masher if you want, but the mixer is just super easy and it makes mashing them so much easier. So just go ahead and taste the potatoes and keep adding salt, pepper, half and half, butter, whatever you need to make them to your desired taste. So now the beef is done. I'm going to show you guys what it looks like. This is after it is cooked in the oven for I think around 2 to 2.5 hours. You want to make sure you taste it, and the longer you cook it, the more tender your beef will be. So if you don't cook it long enough, sometimes it will end up tough, but 2 to 2.5 hours seemed about perfect. I'm going to stir that up, and here I'll show you what all we had. So here are the mashed potatoes with a little bit more butter on the top, just keeping warm in the Instant Pot. I also heated up some biscuits that were in the freezer to go along with this. The cider braised beef, you guys, this is so good. You definitely have to try it. And then our banana bread that we had for dessert. So I hope that this gives you some inspiration for a winter weekend comfort meal. It is really, really good. Again, I've made this for years and the whole family loves it. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.